Welcome. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्तन्निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Verse number 10. यद्वापि निर्मले नीरे वह्नेरौष्ण्यस्य सङ्क्रमः यद्वापि निर्मले नीरे वह्नेरौष्ण्यस्य सङ्क्रमः न प्रकाशस्य तद्वत् स्यात् चिन्मात्रोद्भूतिरेव च न प्रकाशस्य तद्वत् स्यात् चिन्मात्रोद्भूतिरेव च। Next one. काष्णे त्वौष्ण्यं प्रकाशौ द्वौ उद्भवं गच्छतो यथा काष्णे त्वौष्ण्यप्रकाशौ द्वौ उद्भवं गच्छतो यथा शान्तासु सुखचैतन्ये तथैवोद्भूतिमाप्नुतः शान्तासु सुखचैतन्ये तथैवोद्भूतिमाप्नुतः. Very interesting. All of Swami Vidyaranya's examples are very apt and to describe what he wants to exemplify here. So, as I said in the evening class, there will be two examples that we look at. The first one is that of a pot of water, not the pot of water reflecting sun or moon. I want you to move away from that. We have left that behind, at least for now. So this is a pot of water on top of the stove. Okay, a lit stove. That kind of a pot of water. So what happens here? Yadva api, or else, please take, he says as an example, nirmale nire, in a clean pot of water. Not clean pot, clean water. In a pot filled with clean water. So what about it? I mean, usually, the people used to boil water either for bathing, they used to heat the water in the winter, or for drinking to purify it. But here it is a clear water that is being heated up on top of, how they used to do it in the olden times. They would have a clay sikdi. Sikdi means like a stove made of clay, like a semicircular thing with little small knobs also made of clay over that, so you can put a pot. And once you put a pot, what happens? It will stay there, and then you put some logs of wood underneath, light up the logs, and then what will happen? The water will get heated up. Now, does the heat belong to the fire or to the water? Naturally, the heat belongs to the fire. That is the whole point here. But due to the water being a receptive medium, then the heat of the fire is transferred to the water. Then that hot water you take and put it over a tea bag or some coffee grinds, and then your morning brew is ready. So this kind of a water. So the water, the nature of water is actually cool. Shita hisa jalasya prakritihi. The nature of water is cool. It is not hot, because swabhavasya na nivrittihi. If heat were the nature of water, then we would have, what is that, all the oceans would be hot, and all the lakes would be hot, all the rivers would be hot. You may argue that they are becoming hot because of climate change and the melting of glaciers. Agreed. But that's for a different time, that argument. Here we are talking of boiling water. So none of the bodies of water that we know of, except what is that called? Old faithful. So if we are not talking of geysers, because there is already some activity, heat activity going on underground. But other than Old Faithful and some springs, hot springs, water is generally cool to touch. Cool is the nature of water, but because it is fluid and it is chemically receptive to heat. So you put the water on a couple of logs of fire, then watch what happens. What happens? The water heats up, starts to bubble. And the whole point is that the heat does not belong to the water, it belongs to the fire. That is what is being illustrated here. So, in the example, then vanhehe, of the fire, aushnyam. Aushnyam means heat. Ushnaha, heat. Aushnyam, ushnasya bhavah. Aushnyam, the abstract noun of ushna, aushnya. And whoever can pronounce it correctly at the end of the retreat will get a small prize, okay, because it's quite a tongue twister. Aushnya, so the heat of the fire. Sankramaha means agamaha, the entry, the transmission, the entry of the heat and into the water. It seems magical, especially if a small child who still had to go to school, a preschooler, saw this and will wonder, how did the fire transfer the heat to the water? But it happens. This is how it is. And then, so this is the example. The example is of a simple pot of boiling water with the help of some sticks, logs, which are lit. So the logs are there, and the fire from the logs is, the heat is transferred to the water. So then you may say, big deal. So what if the heat is transferred? What does that have to do with me? And more importantly, what does that have to do with Ananda? Read the next line. Vanhehe aushnasya sankramah syat, but na prakashasya. The heat of the fire is certainly transferred to the water, but not the light of the fire. See what a nice example. The light of the fire is still with the fire, only the heat is transferred. Very, very interesting. So the fire does not yield all the properties of itself to the water. But then what about certain phenomena, like in certain lakes, in the Great Lakes? Sometimes the lakes catch on fire, especially in the Midwest. You find Lake Erie catches on fire. So why does the lake catch on fire? That's because there is some oil spill. So there is a different medium here which can broadcast the light of the fire. Same thing, they do all these, in these fancy restaurants, they will take one fruit, anything, usually a banana, I think, and then they'll pour some whatever alcohol on it. And then they will, it's all just a show, they just do like this, and then they light up the banana, and then the banana is glowing blue and orange. It is called, what is it called? Flambe. Okay. So, this is, so the water doesn't have flames. That is the idea. The water only has heat, unlike the banana. It's not the banana, it's the alcohol. Okay. Yeah. So, here, what is this that is happening? The heat of so out of the properties of fire, namely heat and light, both of them belong to fire, and here only the heat is transferred to the water, primarily because of the nature of water. So even if you try to light the water up, then it will just douse the flames. Correct? Tadvat syat, tadvat means similarly in the tadvat syat, in the same manner it is there. What is there and what is not mentioned here is in the vrittis that in which rajas and tamas predominate, namely ghora vritti and shanta vritti. There is only Chinmatra udbhutihi evacha syat. There is only the existence, the manifestation of the chit, quote unquote, aspect of Brahman. The chit that is Brahman alone is manifest in the vrittis that are ghora and mudha. Meaning, Brahman as such chit is there, a Brahman as Ananda, which in the example is likened to what? To the light of the fire, is not there. It is not there. Why? Again, this is because of the medium of reflection. We are again going back, going deeper into waxing eloquent. The Pratibimbavada. The difference in the medium accounts for the transmission of the heat or the light which belong to the fire. This kind of examples Vidyaranya Swami excels in. Even in the Drik Drishya Viveka, he gives the example of Tapta Ayaf Pinda. Pinda, ball. Tapta, red hot. Ayaha, iron ball. So you take an iron ball and put it in the fire. I mean, you need like 800 degrees, okay? Everything in the world melts, but when you talk of metal, we have to add an S in front of it. They smelt. They don't melt. Why? I don't know. This is some kind of a prefix in English. You have to add an S before the melt. So they smelt. Metals smelt and all other things just melt. So then when this iron stays in the foundry, what happens? Foundry means they have, huge fire there. And when this iron stays in the foundry, then it gets red, and then of course it gets hot. Then let's say you take it out at that time. The redness and the heat are the property of the fire, not the ayaf pinda, not the iron ball. This is the same similar example that he uses in Drigdrishya Viveka, Swami Vidyaranyaji, and it is very effective. Because this is observable, you can see that it is the fire that is red and it's hot. The iron ball, before it went into the foundry, where the metals are smelted, then it was just dark, dense, and cold to touch. That was its nature. So, the red hot iron ball is shining in the light and the heat belonging to the fire. Similarly, the jiva, the body mind sense complex of the jiva, is blessed by the sat and chit of Brahman. That is, that is the whole idea there as well. Similar story here. This one has to do with the water only taking on the heat but not the light. The water is incapable of transmitting the light of the fire. Similarly, a tamasika vritti, a mind embraced by, enveloped by the tamas or tamasika vritti, what does it do? It douses the ananda, it pours cold water on the ananda. It is not able to manifest the ananda because there is a problem with the medium. The medium that is exemplified by the water stands for a mind that is crowded with anger, fear, depression, sorrow, etc., unable to project Brahman fully. So, in other words, Brahman is there, it is being manifest, but with inhibitions, with as though limitations. This is, very nice use of the, what is that called? Pratibimbavada that we saw earlier. So, na prakashasya tadvad syat. Similarly, the light of the fire belongs to the fire and it does not get transferred to the water. Likewise, in a mind filled with ghora and or mudha vritti, in a mind where rajas and tamas predominate, what happens? Chinmatra udbhutihi eva syat. Chinmatra, chit alone shines. Chit alone shines. Sat also shines. Sat and chit shine, but not Ananda. For the Ananda to shine, for Brahman's Ananda to shine in the miserable mind, the mind has to first stop being miserable. Simple. The mind has to grow. The mind has to just be more present, more audarya, more bigness, more accommodation. This is what the mind has to do. Otherwise, it is not able to manifest the ananda that is already there, and only the sat and chit are manifest. In other words, a person under the influence of the ghora vritti and the other one, what is that, mudha vritti, will be, you can look at the person and say, yes, they exist and they are alive. That much you can say, but not anything else. A zombied kind of existence. This is, meaning they are not living their life completely. They are not living as Brahman completely. There are inhibitions and blockages to manifesting the Ananda of Brahman. Then the next example, we have taken the pot of water and put it down on the counter or on the ground, and now we are just watching the fire come out of the logs, the crackling fire in the next verse. Kashtha means wood. Kashthe, in the wood. Tu, whereas. But whereas in the wood, and we have to understand burning wood, okay? Not any wood, burning wood. Kashthe tu, whereas in the wood, aushnya prakashau dvau udbhavan gachatah. In the wood, however, whereas in the wood, aushnya, what is aushnya? The heat. And then what is prakasha? Light. The heat and the light, both of them are manifest. Udbhavam gachatah. Udbhavam gachatah means there is the rise of the heat and the light, which belongs not to the wood but to the fire. But in the wood, both the heat and the light of the fire are manifest. In the same manner, we'll see the meaning of the verse and then talk about it. In the same manner, Shantasu, in the Shanta vritti, in the Sattvika vritti, then Sukha Chaitanye, Sukhascha, and Chaitanyascha, Chaitanyancha, Sukhamcha, Chaitanyamcha, Sukha Chaitanye, Tathaiva, Udbhutim, Apnutaha. Up, to gain. Apnoti, apnutaha, apnuvanti. This is dual, apnutaha. Why is it dual? Because there are two things. What are the two things? Sukha and Chaitanya. Chit and Ananda. Ananda here is talked about as Sukha, happiness. Okay? Yeah. So in the Shanta Vritti, you can see the joy of Brahman. Again, of is within quotes. You can see the joy that is Brahman. And you can see the sentience, consciousness that is Brahman. You can see the existence that is Brahman manifest in the Shanta Vritti, just like in the wood, fire, in the form of heat and light. Both the properties of fire are manifest. Because the wood and fire, they have a natural affinity. And so elsewhere in some other Vedanta text, this similar example is given and also it talks about wet wood. Wet wood, a damp piece of wood. Let's say you go into the ocean and bring back one driftwood that has been sloshing around in the ocean for a long time. And then you try to do a yajna with it. What will it be? It will be all smoke. Why? Because the water has entered the wood. The fire, it cannot manifest the light of the fire, of the flames. And so here, these two examples are primarily to show the fact that in the world, in this Jagat, it is possible for things to partially emit properties of things they are associated with. Like even the water takes on the heat but cannot manifest the light. Whereas a dry piece of wood or kindling, a dry piece of wood which is kindling, takes on the Sat, Chit and Chit and Ananda, which is described here as Aushnya and Prakasha. So similarly, a mind that is prepared to receive the Ananda that Brahman always broadcasts is a mind that is filled with Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna means it is a guna, it is a quality, a saintliness, a godliness, which allows one to grow emotionally, to grow into a person who is Ishvara, Purusha. So the Sattva is an important bridge to discovery of oneself as Purusha. The word Purusha also has two derivations. The first derivation is Puri Shete, the one who sleeps in the city, or rather we should convert it into citadel, in a fortress. You know, in Rajasthan and all, we have all these fortresses. Kila it is called, you know, all these fortresses. And then it was a very bad idea, I think, war-wise, because the fortresses would have granaries and place for a small city and the army, and then in the wartime everybody would retreat to the fortress, and then the moat would be closed, would be drawn, the drawbridge would be drawn from the moat, and then the moat would be full of snapping, biting things, sharks, alligators, etc., so that nobody will cross over. But the thing is, a patient army could wait there till the supplies ran out, and then they had to surrender. So this fort psychology is actually not good, it's an entrapment. So the first derivation of Purusha is Purishete, the one who sleeps. Why is the person sleeping? This jiva is sleeping, the sleep of Ajnanam. Ajnanam means what? Self-ignorance. So the individual sleeping the sleep of self-ignorance, as though trapped in this body-mind sense complex. This is a very interesting picture from the Kathopanishad. And then that is the first meaning of the word Purusha. Puri Shete. Ajnana Nidra Suptaha, the one that has been sleeping the ageless sleep of Atma Ajnanam. And then what? This is the first one. The one the jiva who keeps saying, let me out, I'm trapped. I have some views, some portholes are there, I can see the world. But what kind of a world is it? Let me out. I want to be free. And the same word, because this is the beauty of the Sanskrit language, the same word Purusha is derived another way. Sarvan Purayati iti Purusha, that which fills up everything. Actually, there is only one Purusha. The one who sleeps in the city, if the person is woken up by the combination of the Guru and the Shastra, and then that person is really Purusha. That's all. The other Purusha, the one that fills up everything. And the Sattva here, the quality of being a Sattvic person, is an important bridge from the first Purusha, the miserable Purusha, to the always delightful Purusha, Ishvara. Okay. So, this way, so what is the point of these examples? Become a dry piece of wood. No, become what is exemplified by the dry piece of wood, so that you are able to manifest the Ananda of Brahman. You are able to experience the Ananda that is Brahman. Okay. Then he sums it up. Not much to say in verse number 12, but let us look at it. Vastu svabhavam ashritya व्यवस्था तु भयो समा वस्तु स्वभावमाश्रित्य व्यवस्था तु भयो समा अनुभूत्यनुसारेण कल्प्यते हि नियामकम् अनुभूत्यनुसारेण कल्प्यते हि नियामकम् वस्तु स्वभावम् आश्रित्य vastu svabhavam ashritya. So summing up the two examples, the author says that svabhavam ashritya, taking refuge into one's own nature, whatever that nature is, anything, any vastu, taking refuge in its own nature, this is what the arrangement is there. It is the nature of things that determines the kind of things that they can manifest. The nature of, in other words, we should translate this literally. We'll be missing the point. We'll just summarize the meaning here, because what is it trying to say? According to its own nature, every medium of reflection can only reflect as much as it is possible for it to, depending on its nature. That's all the first line says. Anubhuti anusarena kalpyate hi niyamakam. Niyamakam means there is a constriction. A constriction based on the properties of that particular thing, which makes it either a good or a bad or a medium or a mediocre manifester of whatever there is, a medium. So this, this medium is however it is. So the problem is with the medium. The problem is not with what is reflected. And this is, anubhuti anusarena means this, the example for this, just like what we have given, he says in verses number 10 and 11, is available in the whole world. Like I said, in so many texts we have this example of the wet wood, wet kindling, not catching the fire. And similarly, a person who is not able to understand this knowledge, etc., etc., needs to work on oneself. But unlike the medium of reflection, in this example, the mind is eminently trainable. You can make a watery mind to a woody mind, no problem, where it will shine the ananda of Brahman as well. The mind, the antahkarana, is eminently trainable. How? There are two kinds of sadhanas. Sadhanas means practices. The first sadhana has to do which is called bahiranga sadhana. Bahiranga means outward focused sadhana. Why? Because the person was already outward focused, always thinking of what is this person saying about me, oh, this person is good, this person is bad, why am I having this bad time? Already completely outwardly focused. And so the Shruti channels the outward focus into a lifestyle, and this is called karma yoga. Karma yoga is a very important and a primary example of bahiranga sadhana, where the mind is trained to be more and more sattvic, even as one is out in the world doing one's things, whatever one is doing. Here, the focus is, one is told that your focus is totally on self-growth. And the focus being totally on self-growth, what you do is not important. Whatever you're doing is fine. And so, what is more important is the attitude with which the task is completed rather than the task itself. The task can be anything. Your attitude with which you infuse that task, that is what accounts for and causes emotional growth and causes the sattva factor to increase. How? Because that which needs to be done needs to be done. And the karma yogi, for the karma yogi, Ishvara is up front and center. You see that, the Bhagavad Gita says this very clearly. You see this, that, O Arjuna, you are not the agent of your action. I am the agent. 11th chapter says this very clearly. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. Just be an instrument of my will, O Arjuna. Just be an instrument. You are not the agent of action. So in Karma Yoga, the Ishvara is front and center as the agent. You drag in Ishvara and say, please do this, I don't know how to do this. You please do this, you are the Lord, you are the goddess, you please help me get over this, you please do this. And then whatever result of action comes, that is also seen as a gift, prasada from Ishvara, and one learns to gracefully accept it. This is Karma Yoga, where there is no time to try to chase after raga and dvesha. My preferences, my prejudices, my likes, my dislikes, my views. All this, there is no time. In fact, there is no time for this I that is identified with the ahankara, the I notion, ego, whatever you want to call it. There is no I-ness there. The focus is on making whatever you want to do into an act of prayer. Whatever you do is an act of worship. Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. The 46th verse of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita makes this abundantly clear. The archana means worship. The worship is done through what? Not through flowers, not through incense or arati, through the work that you have to do, through doing your swadharma properly. This is Karma Yoga. It trains the mind. What does it do? It gives antahkarana shuddhi. It cleanses the mind of what? These two vrittis. Ghora and Mudha vrittis. The terrible vritti of Rajas and the terrifying vritti of Tamas. Both of them are taken care of. One grows naturally in Sattva, because Karma Yoga is based on renunciation. Lot of sacrifice is needed. You want to do something, but then you can't do it. Once I was with Pujya Swamiji and a young child came to him and said, Swamiji, what is your favorite activity? What is it that you like to do best? And I'll never forget his response. Even though he taught her, it was like he was teaching all of us who were in the room. And that's how he was. And so he said, he said, when you are a Swami, you really don't get to do all the things that you like. Because that's not what a Swami's life is. So, I trained myself to enjoy whatever I have to do. Beautiful. And this is not just true for a Swami. It is true for everyone. You can't always do as you like. So you grow to liking whatever has to be done, whatever you have to do. You learn to love it. Another story from Pujya Swamiji's life. He went to Bhiksha in somebody's house in his early days, after becoming a Swami and emerging from his cocoon of meditation and sadhana. And then he went to somebody's house, and then what happened? They gave him something made of bitter gourd, Karela. He was not too fond of bitter gourd, but he just praised the lady, said, "Oh, you have cooked so well, you have taken so much trouble, thank you." And then somebody else next week wanted to have Pujya Swamiji over to their house to bless their house with his presence. And so this lady became an expert on what Swamiji likes and doesn't like. And she was called. She was contacted. "You had a very successful Bhiksha and Swamiji praised. We were there. We saw Swamiji praise you. And what was it? What happened? What did he like? Make sure you make bitter gourd," she said. "Make sure you make Karela. Even if you don't have anything else, doesn't matter. Make sure you make bitter gourd." And so it happened. And Swamiji didn't understand what was happening. Wherever he went for lunch, bitter gourd. Bitter gourd appetizer, bitter gourd main dish, bitter gourd payasam. Now this I am exaggerating, but bitter gourd dessert. I am exaggerating here. But it was from start to finish bitter gourd. If they could have made a sweet dish out of bitter gourd, they would have done so. And he said, "What on earth is going on? Wherever I go, this bitter gourd is determined." But then Swamiji said, "I am more determined than the bitter gourd, because, oh bitter gourd, your presence in my life is not going to make me bitter." And how is that going to happen? "I'm going to start loving you." And actually he started to like Karela. This is what Karma Yoga is. This is what it is. You grow to learning to love whatever needs to be done. And that's how sattva grows. This is Bahiranga Sadhana. The prasada of Bahiranga Sadhana is Antahkarana Shuddhi. Or in some other places it is called Chitta Shuddhi. Same thing. Chitta here should not be confused with Sat Chit. That is Chit. This is Chittam. Okay. So Chitta Shuddhi means, Chittam means the emotive aspect of the person. Chitta Shuddhi, where everything is purified. Shuddhi. One becomes more and more receptive, more and more present, more and more compassionate, more and more accommodative, more and more one has the freedom and ability to reach out and touch somebody, reach out and help them. More and more one has the freedom to see what is it that they might need, that I might be able to offer. This is Antahkarana Shuddhi. Then this is what is called, this is a very important example of Bahiranga Sadhana. Then we have Antaranga Sadhana, inward facing sadhanas, inward practices. Like the prime example is japa, meditation. Inward practices like meditation, japa, etc. Then what do? They give, such inward practices give what is called sthairya, sthirasya bhava. Sthairya means they give chitta, what is that called? Chitta naishchalyam. They still the mind. They still the heart. So, chitta shuddhi from rajasic and tamasic qualities that proliferate the mind, the heart, the inner instrument, and chitta naishchalyam, the prasada of meditation, where one learns to sit with oneself with the discomfort that entails, allowing the loneliness, the fears, whatever it is to bubble up without trying to make it go away. One learns to pray to Bhagavan with the help of the japa, with the help of mantra, etc. These are practices. Practices for the mind to be still and for the mind to be accommodative. Why should the heart be still? Why should the heart be accommodative? Because this is what is needed for jnanam. Jnanam, Atma Jnanam, self-knowledge, walks into the heart. That is clarified, purified from Prakrita Buddhi. Prakrita Buddhi means bestial and instinctive behaviors. Ahara Nidra Bhayamaithunancha Samanyametat Pashubhir Naranam Dharmo hi etam adhiko visheshah dharmena hinaha pashubhis samanaha. Somebody said this is from the Mahabharata. I looked, but I couldn't find it in the Mahabharata. Somewhere it is there, I don't know where. And it must be there. So, this is a verse that says that animals and human beings have a lot in common, much more than we think. They eat, we eat. They both eat. They both means not two animals. The animals and human beings both eat. Okay? Then, having eaten too much, of course, immediately they both go to sleep. Animals also sleep, and human beings also capable of sleep. And then you go and frighten an animal, it will get afraid. And human beings are also subject to fear. Even when they encounter the small animal like a cockroach or a gecko, they are afraid. And so fear is common to both. Animals reproduce, human beings also have the capacity to reproduce. So what is the Vishesha? What is something that is different among human beings? If one were to ask that, the verse says it is the ability to follow dharma. Adhikaha, that is the extra blessing. The ability to know between right and wrong. That conscience. That Bhagavan, Krishna in the form of the conscience. Within, in the form of the buddhi. That is the main Vishesha. And without dharma, without the ability to follow dharma, then the human being may as well be a dog or a cat or anything. So, in the beginning, the distinction is not very much there. You see, in a small child, it will just snatch a toy from someone else, or it will go to the toy shop with its parents and then take something off the counter and walk out of the shop. The fact that, okay, this needs to be paid for, and all that is not understood. Or this doesn't belong to me and I should not touch it, is not understood. The child cries whenever it wants. It sleeps whenever it wants. So there is it shows us that there is a certain growth process where dharma is followed in steps, gradually learnt through socialization, etc. The dharma is already there, it is latent, but because of the training, this dharma is brought out. It is already latent, but it is not manifest. Then as the child grows, more of this dharma is manifest. If unimpeded by ghora and mudha vrittis, if the mind is too much covered in tamas and rajas, then the dharma is not, one is not capable of following dharma. One becomes like Duryodhana, who said very, very without any compunction, who said very, very blatantly, I know what dharma is, but I ain't going to follow it. What are you going to do? He just said it like that, very blandly. And so, this dharma is what is the distinguishing factor between an animal and a person. So when one comes to Vedanta, there is a different kind of growth taking place. Dharma, one becomes very, very attuned to dharma, even though one has been following it all one's life, more or less. Here, one becomes even more aligned with dharma. And that's how Adi Shankara says in many of his bhashyas, the person grows from being a prakrita buddhi, a bestial buddhi type of person, to a samskrita buddhi. What is samskrita buddhi? I know, a buddhi that knows Sanskrit rules. No. Samskrita buddhi is a cultivated, civilized buddhi. Not just for the sake of showing off because in social circles, but truly a buddhi that has chitta shuddhi. This is the Samskrita buddhi, where ahimsa, asteya, all these qualifications, the yamas and the niyamas, where they predominate in the mind, that is the sattvic mind. And then when one is ready for that, then the mind is blessed. Such a mind is blessed with the Ananda, which is Brahman. Then, verse number 13. Na ghorasu na modhasu sukhanubhava ikshyate. Na ghorasu na modhasu sukhanubhava ikshyate. Shantasvapi kvachit kaschit sukhatishaya ikshanam. Shantasvapi kvachit kaschit sukhatishaya ikshanam. Continuing to sum this up, he says, na ghorasu, not in the ghora vrittis, nor in the mudha vrittis, the experience of happiness, which of course belongs not to the medium but to Brahman, is not seen. Na ikshyate. Passive voice, iksh, to watch, to see, to look, is not seen. What is not seen? Sukhasya anubhavaha. The experience of happiness is not seen in an antahkarana dominated by, proliferated by tamasic and rajasic thoughts, vrittis, habits, orientations, etc. And this is very clear. We can see this in the world. People that complain a lot, very difficult for them to be happy. People that are hypercritical of themselves, very difficult to be happy. People that have made that hypercritical attitudes, transferred it outside, they are hypercritical of others, very difficult to be happy. Happiness is there, but it is not manifest, because the medium which manifests the happiness is what? Is afflicted with tendencies, habitual orientations that we have been talking about, is afflicted. Some of these then if you ask the question, how did I get into this habit? Some of the habits are due to the unconscious mind, as a result of the unresolved, unreckoned pain within. So one develops all kinds of tamasic habits, rajasic habits. As I said, as a child maybe it was a coping mechanism. Now at best it is a moping mechanism. That's all. It has no function at all. No function at all. But one doesn't know that, so one clings to the habits. Certain other habits, interestingly, are by osmosis mimicked after seeing the parents and the caregivers and the family habits. Very interesting. Family habits. And they just, this becomes the legacy. Usually, people like to receive from their parental home a copy of the Bhagavad Gita that was put on the altar. So nice. Yes, please give me that. Here, one, one passes on the legacy of habitual orientations. Like being in conflict all the time. Certain families are like that. Their way of saying I love you is to have a sudden fight with the loved ones. You just keep screaming. And the other person also screams. And you also keep screaming. Everybody screaming unhappily ever after. Yelling and screaming. This is... And then, and then a child growing up in such a family is told, if it gets frightened, they say, no, they do this because they love each other. So the child grows up with a distorted understanding of love. Love means I have to yell. And if someone is yelling at me, that means they love me. This is something which is very, very strange. The food for such people doesn't get digested until they have a good fight. This is a legacy. Do you really want to carry it on? Is that what you want to bless your children with? This is something you need to ask. This is just one example. There are many such examples. Grudges carried on from medieval ages. Grudges. And then resentment. A kind of a feeling that I am not being attended to. I have got the short end of the stick. I have been cheated out of what is due to me in life, in the world, anywhere. That lack is passed on from generation to generation to generation. We have to be very careful what we absorb from the families of origin. Another example of pattern, being disconnected all the time from one another. Again, some pain, some sorrow somewhere. Not even seeing one another. And nowadays that's not a problem because everybody has, what should I say, attached to their hand the smartphone. Phone is smart. What about you, really? That is what it is. So everybody is just doing their own thing. It's not non-interference, which is a good thing. But here it is a kind of a dissociation. Not knowing how to express the feelings, uncomfortable around feelings. So you don't even connect too much. And then there is the pattern, the familial habit pattern of masquerading as though everything is fine. It's all about appearances. Inside is a gnawing, heart full of pain, a bleeding heart. And it is covered up with smiles. Nothing is wrong, nothing to see here. Everything is okay. Masquerading with big smiles, covering up the inner pain. All these things, when we start going into the depths of the Panchadasi and other serious texts of Vedanta, these are all things we need to look at. What have I got from my family that is eminently dispensable? We are not discussing all the wonderful things you may have imbibed from the family. You may have imbibed the helpfulness, maybe a loving nature, maybe helping other people. All these things you may have imbibed. Truth telling, all these things. This is wonderful. Please continue with that. Natyajyam. Don't give up that. But do take the time, especially while and after studying chapter 15 of the Panchadasi, to see what else you might be carrying that needs to drop, that is not serving your purpose. Many times these patterns are reproduced because once you get together with the family, holiday time, etc., etc., you don't know what else to say. Everybody else is criticizing, and you suddenly feel, if I don't participate in the critique at least once in a while, then they will not love me, they will wonder what is wrong. In fact, they won't even notice. They won't even notice. The point is not to be a moral police and go and tell them you are very critical people or you are masquerading and covering up your feelings. That is none of your business. We mind our own business. It's all an inside job. What we do is we just see that we don't reproduce those habits. We don't keep on reproducing just because it has been handed down from generation to generation within the family. You don't need to upkeep this legacy anymore. You can be an inner Swami and divest yourself of this hurtful, harmful legacy which is cutting short your opportunities for moksha, for freedom from this samsara. This is something one has to do. Because the ghora, mudha vrittis, they have a particular manifestation based on the familial culture, the culture around oneself, the nation, etc., etc. All these have to be interrogated. Most important is the family. And it is okay to not participate. And at the same time, you don't need to critique them either. So, why? Because as long as you are trapped in the unconscious mind, and as long as you are unconsciously projecting and reproducing the ghora and mudha vrittis, sukhanubhava na ikshyate, sukhanubhavo na ikshyate. There is no experience of happiness because the antahkarana is crowded with thorny thoughts, thorny vrittis, difficult. And sattva is the clearing of the underbrush of the antahkarana so that the happiness that is already there can be discovered and enjoyed. This is what sattva is. Then, shantasu api, in the shanta vritti also, like the ghora and mudha vrittis, this is the second line of verse 13, kvachit kaschit sukha atishayah ikshyatam. So, in the shanta vritti also, even in a sattvic mind, the experience of happiness varies in degrees. Varies in degrees. Kvachit, little bit, kaschit, somewhat, it keeps varying. Sukha and its atishaya. Sukha, happiness, atishaya means too much, a lot of sukha. Sukha and its excess. Also, in the shanta vritti also, it varies. Why? I thought the whole point was to become sattvic. Yes, even in the sattvic nature, there are gradations. Little bit sattvic, little more sattvic, little more sattvic, etc., etc. There are gradations. And these gradations, in a slightly different context, form a very interesting section in the Taittiriya Upanishad and also in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, called an analysis of Ananda, Ananda Mimamsa. an analysis of Ananda. Why should you analyze Ananda? Because it seems to differ. How do you know? Because the neighbor seems much more happier than I. That's how I know. Maybe the neighbor is saying the same thing about you. But nonetheless, I see that some people are happy. They have a song on their lips. Their heart is whistling. They seem to be carefree. And others a little less so. And still others a little less so. Why? Because the sattva is broadcast in degrees. Little bit of sattva, little bit of happiness. Little more sattva, little more happiness. Not that the happiness varies. It's just that, you look at the happiness through an aperture. And so, if the aperture is small, then you say, okay, I have a tiny bit of happiness that I can access. So, sattva is that aperture. When the aperture grows bigger, you have access to a lot more happiness. But this is again on the level of the empirical reality, and we are talking of the happiness that is mediated through a state of mind called sattva. So these happinesses range from little to a lot. And here the section on Ananda Mimamsa first sets up an ideal typical unit of the ultimate human happiness. Yuvasyat sadhu yuvadhyayakah ashishto dradhishto balishtah. Like this, it sets up a unit, an ideal typical unit of the utmost of human happiness. So what are the ingredients of this young man? Why man? Because, it's a patriarchal culture and men have more opportunities and more strength. Men are stronger than women. That's the only reason. Yuva syat, let there be a young man. Oh, young always goes together with restless. Is that so? No. This one is a sadhu. Sadhu and young? How is that possible? Well, this one is. Oh, he must just be, totally, what's the word for it? He must be totally a dunce. Not well educated. Adhyayakah, ashishtah, very well educated. And, he's now starting to look like son-in-law material. Okay? Yeah. The prospective father of the bride, the father of the bride is looking at him as a prospective son-in-law. And he tells his wife, well-behaved, well-educated young man, what more we want for our daughter? The wife is not convinced. She says, show me the money. What's the point if he's just sitting there, all sitting there and is incapable of earning? And the next line rectifies this impression by saying, Vittena purna syat. Iyam prithvi. Let us imagine that this whole world and this whole earth and all her natural resources and all her mineral resources, timber, everything, gems, all these things belong to this man alone. Now the mother of the bride is convinced. Yes, don't worry about matching the horoscope. Just catch hold of him. No problem. So this is the one unit of human ananda. The maximum you can get if you have a human body, mind, sense complex living here in this universe. Then what? This is another aspect of Vedic mathematics. Multiply this by 100. Saya eko, no, what is that? Yeah, shatam te ye shatam manusha anandaha. Multiply this by 100. Saya eko devanam anandah, gandharvanam anandah. Then this becomes one unit of a lower rung celestial's happiness. Kindara, Gandharva, Yaksha, these are all musical celestials. What are they doing? They are singing bhajans from day to night. All the time they love bhajans, they love music, they are presiding deities of musicians. And they just love to sing and play instruments. They are starting bands all the time. And of course they are happy. They don't have a care in the world. They're very, very happy. Then you take the 1 unit of Gandharva's happiness and guess what to do with it? Multiply that by another 100. Then you get the happiness enjoyed by a chaiwala in heaven called Karma Devata. Karman devan apiyanti, those whose main job is to serve other devas. Karma devata, chaiwalas of heaven. And then, they bring tea, they clean up after other devatas, etc. They prune the gardens of other devatas. So they are lower rung. They are also very, very happy. They have now, if you look at the human Ananda, they are what? 10,000 times removed from human Ananda. And then again it goes on like this. Te ye shatam karma devanam anandah, saya eko ajanam devanam anandah. And then te ye shatam, and then again saya eko pitranam chiralokanam anandah. So like this it goes all the way to Indra, his guru Brihaspati, and Prajapati, the Lord of the universe. It goes all the way. And then along with this portion there is a refrain, a chant, a chorus, if you will. Shrotriyasya cha kamahatasya saya eko manusha anandah, shrotriyasya cha kamahatasya te ye shatam manusha anandah, saya eko gandharvanam anandah, shrotriyasya cha kamahatasya. So many times this shrotriya and akamahataha comes. Shrotriya means the same Ananda is enjoyed by the person right here, right now, without needing to become a Gandharva or a Karmadeva or a Pitru ancestor, etc. Why? Because the person has studied Vedanta well from a teacher who knows how to teach. Shrotriya. And then what is the other qualification? Akamahataha. You have to be careful how we resolve the compound. Not akamena hataha, kamena na hataha. Akamahata means not hijacked, not killed by desire. Not killed by desire. Meaning the one who has vairagya, the one who is like a sadhu or a sannyasi, enjoys all the levels of ananda. Why? Because they have a sattvic mind? Not only. Because they have atma jnanam, self-knowledge they have. That is why. That is why they are able to enjoy this. Because and for the self-knowledge, of course one needs a antahkarana, that is sattvic. One needs a sattvic mind for self-knowledge. Self-knowledge gives one the ananda which is Brahman in full measure. Whereas if you only depend on some kind of a mental clarity, this is the point he is trying to make. If you just want to grow into a sattvic person, that's all the goal, then still there will be variations of various ananda. There will be variations. And so therefore what? Therefore, Patha Vedantam, the self-knowledge is what is needing to be studied. Otherwise, if self-knowledge is not there, even the Shanta Vritti, which is a bridge, will not help you if you don't walk on the bridge to get to the other side. That is what the thing is. Shanta Vritti is a bridge, all right. It's a bridge to Atma Jnanam. But if you don't cross over to Atma Jnanam, adorning yourself with Shanta Vritti is like wearing a tuxedo to stay at home. Oh, are you going out? No. Oh, you're having some kind of a opera soiree at home? No. Then why are you all dressed up just like that? So, the person endowed with Karma Yoga, without studying Jnanam, without studying Atma Jnanam, a person endowed with Shanta Swarupa, without studying Vedanta, is like a person wearing a suit at home or a Kanjivaram sari at home. This is a heavy sari full of all gold threads sitting at home. Who does that? No one. And so, this is something to ponder over. And to never forget. And he is going to reiterate this later, that the Shanta Vritti is a bridge to Atma Jnanam. No Shanta Vritti, no Atma Jnanam, no Atma Jnanam, no Ananda. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.